Former President Donald Trump has invoked his Fifth Amendment right and refused to testify under oath Wednesday. Trump was deposed by lawyers from the New York Attorney General's office. It's part of the office's 3-year civil litigation investigation into the Trump organization's finances. Attorney General Letitia James says that there is evidence that the organization used false information to obtain loans. Robert Costa has more.
Trump invoked his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination, a move he had once disparaged.
You see, the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Trump's deposition is the latest chapter in a contentious standoff with New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who is investigating whether Trump's real estate businesses inflated the value of its assets, including his personal Fifth Avenue apartment. In a statement, Trump said he took the Fifth because he had to. When your family, your company, become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt, you have no choice. CBS News legal expert and analyst Ricky Kleeman.
And any lawyer worth his or her salt would have told Donald Trump that it was essential for him to invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege at that deposition today.
The New York Attorney General's office said today they will continue to pursue the facts and the law wherever they may lead. Our investigation continues. This comes as new details emerge about the FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Agents spent 9 hours in the residence and searched an office. There are other Trump-related investigations, a criminal inquiry by the Manhattan District Attorney into his businesses there, a Georgia probe into his efforts to overturn the state's 2020 election results, and a federal grand jury hearing witness testimony about Trump's activities related to the 2020 vote. Trump remains popular in the Republican Party. Supporters outside Mar-a-Lago are just one sign of that. The former president is now using the FBI search to raise funds. The former president huddled with Republican allies at his residence in Bedminster, New Jersey last night. They urged him to get into the 2024 presidential race soon.
We're going to take a deeper dive on this by bringing in CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa, as well as Steve Barrick. He is a partner at Barrick & Associates and a former prosecutor. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Robert, I'm going to start with you. Why did former President Trump plead the Fifth? Do we know?
He invoked the Fifth Amendment on the advice of his lawyers, and in this particular legal circumstance, a civil inquiry into his businesses, it's not entirely unexpected for someone to do what he did, which is invoke the Fifth Amendment, decline to answer questions. But at the same time, it's a decision that comes amid mounting legal scrutiny for the former president. He's facing not only a civil inquiry from New York State, but he's facing a possible criminal probe from the Manhattan District Attorney, activity on Capitol Hill, the investigation of the January 6th committee, and, of course, the Justice Department with its grand jury probes.
Steve, I want to get your response to that. With multiple probes going on, obviously, pleading the Fifth is a constitutional right that the former president is afforded, just like any other citizen. But might this hurt his case? Remind us what it means, actually, to plead the Fifth.
Right. Hi, Lana. Thanks for having me. Look, to plead the Fifth, you have a right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution against self-incrimination. In civil cases, when you have potential criminal liability elsewhere, it's common and expected to have lawyers instruct their clients to take the Fifth Amendment, to not say anything that potentially could be used in a criminal case against them. So not surprising. If I were the ex-president's lawyer, I would advise him to do the same thing. So I'm not surprised. And this attorney general and the ex-president have a long history of political bantering back and forth. So, there's some bad blood between the two of them. So I'm not surprised at all that one, she was actually physically present during the deposition, and two, he took the Fifth.
Steve, I want to follow up on that because Trump's lawyers have also argued that his testimony could be used in these parallel criminal investigations. But they also say that it could impact a possible immunity deal. Do you know anything more about this, and can you explain it for us?
Right. I think I'm not 100% sure an immunity deal that may or may not be pending. I don't think that's entirely public yet. But I think right now, what Trump's lawyers are doing is, look, there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a very broad investigation from the Department of Justice. And I mean, no one's 100% certain on what direction that one's going. So I think they would like to preserve the status quo to get their arms around what President Trump's exposure is, liability, where the possible issues are, before they have him making any statements on the record.
And Robert, what's next then for the former president? What about 2024 and the GOP? What are you learning?
CBS News has learned tonight that it's possible now that the former president could make an earlier than expected announcement and jump into the 2024 presidential race, fueled by the outrage inside the GOP about what has happened in recent days. Discussions are ongoing inside of the former president's inner circle. Some people are telling him to wait, especially those on Capitol Hill, saying wait until after the midterm elections. But because of the consolidation of power he has seen around him, in the sense that the party has been rallying to him, not just at dinner last night at Bedminster, but in public statements, he believes, I'm told by people close to him, that he has political capital now, and he could spend that political capital, but it's by no means a sure thing that he's going to make an earlier than expected announcement. What I keep being told by my top sources is that that option is now very much on the table.
All right, Robert Costa, Steve Barrick, thank you both.